What is going on, gunfighters? Welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns, gunfighting, tactics, philosophy, the right way, with God Almighty at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world, first-hand experience. I am your host, Michael Milito, blessed to serve you today. First and foremost, I am a Christian. God has blessed me to be Marine Corps combat veteran, LAPD, private contractor for a 3-letter government agency, state rifle and pistol champion a few times over, FBI certified, NRA certified handgun instructor, etc. Street cred there. Let's get into the episode. Today, we're going to talk about crossover guns. And I've done one crossover for defense and hunting. This is crossover carry and competition, a carry comp gun. You'll know if you've listened to longer versions of the bio, I'm big into competition shooting. I've competed ever since I was young. Before I joined the Marine Corps at 17, I won my first gold medal in competition shooting. I have honestly, by the talents God has blessed me to have, because what would I have that I did not first receive? I have won more shooting competitions than I can honestly remember. All manner of shooting competitions, from rifle to handgun, even black powder. Also, you may notice the audio quality. Got a new microphone. If you don't know, my wife and I live as neo-nomads. On our last journey, the microphone broke. Also, we live off-grid. I'm off-grid right now. If you notice that trickling sound, it's because I'm just outside of the city. I don't know if I'm in or out of city limits, but it's rather hot, and we live off-grid. My wife is in town. She works remote, but she needs a lot higher internet speed than I do. But I found an irrigation system that runs into town, and there's cold water running through it. So guess what I'm sitting on top of? Irrigation pipes. Maybe it'll add some nice ambiance, but it's a free air conditioner for the day, which is a great blessing. Also, laying beside me alert is Rhodesian Ridgeback Alexander Hamilton, the silent mascot here of the podcast. Just got done not too long ago dry firing for the day. I've been thinking about this episode because I'm trying to help one of the patrons. By that I mean I'm trying to help him spend his money wisely with my training and experience to help him. Patrons have access to a cool insider chat where we talk about this kind of stuff all the time. But he has taken his training to the next level and gotten into competition shooting. He wants a good crossover gun that's good for competition and also defense. If you're not familiar with the world of competition shooting, there's all manner of handgun competition shooting, from Bullseye 22 to USPSA, IDPA. Those are the more practical shooting disciplines, some outlaw matches. Those are mostly what I'm going to talk about today. Practical shooting. Practical shooting denotes shooting and movement, use of cover and concealment, different stage setups, moving targets, that kind of shooting discipline. That's what I'm really talking about today. I'm not talking about a 22 handgun bullseye gun that you would carry. I'm talking about a practical competition shooting gun that you would also carry. That's what we are talking about today. And since I just got done dry firing with it, I'm going to start with the Sig Sauer 226. It is the gun that is on my hip. Caveat: if it's for concealed carry, I like and I prefer single action only. I think the double single action is a fine gun for many things. For a bug out gun, for a duty gun, for a combat handgun. I think the normal double single action that those are primarily found in is fine. And I think it'd be remiss of me if I didn't explain a little bit of why. Okay, as a former police officer, I was LAPD. Cops, I don't know how else to put it, can get away with, I think they should probably have the same standard, but they can get away with having their gun out of the holster a lot more situations than you can as the armed citizen. I think there should be one standard and one law, but let's just say that they have more liberty in which they can draw out their handgun and not get in any trouble, where if you drew out your handgun in the same situation, you would get in trouble. So they already have their gun out of their holster and can be at a ready position, in which case they can take up the slack on that trigger and break that first double action shot quicker than I can go from a safely holstered concealed carry gun to getting shots on the target. Also, I've said this many times, and this is somebody that's trained many law enforcement, civilians, military. I'm an FBI certified handgun instructor. I've also taught, I don't mention it in the bio a lot, but I am a certified professional firearms instructor at one of the largest training academies in the country. By that measure, probably the world for civilians. And they don't only teach civilians, they teach all manner of people. I'm going to say this nicely, but most cops are not gunfighters. Most cops are administrators that carry guns. Some cops are gunfighters and take it seriously and seek out their own training, but a lot of cops shoot when it's qual time. And qual time might be once every 6 months, once every other month. Let's say once every month if it's a really good department. I'm also into fitness, physical fitness, working out. How good at running do you think I would be if I ran once a month? How good at lifting weights do you think I would be if I lifted weights once a month? How fit do you think I would be if I worked out once a month? Shooting, especially handguns, more than rifles and shotguns, is a perishable skill. Ask a cop how often they use a pen or a keyboard versus their firearm. And again, that's not a knock on them. That's just, I think we view them through kind of rose-tinted glasses, thinking they carry a gun, therefore they must be a gunfighter. I can walk around Santa Monica Boulevard with a guitar on my back, and people might think that I'm a rock star, that I can play the guitar. That doesn't mean that I can actually play the guitar, it just means I carry one around. I think for your general beat cop or similar things, again, I said most cops, not all cops, but for your general cop like that, a double single is a good call. For you as a concealed carrier or a competition shooter, I don't think that it is. Can you shoot competition and do it well with a double single? You certainly can, and many people can get really, really good with a double single, but here's what I'm going to say for you. If you're going to go down the road of double single, you had better almost marry it. It is quite a bit. So you had better already be on top of your training and dry fire game, because you're trying to get two different trigger pulls down. That long double action and that crisp, clean single action. It's not always a disadvantage in competition. In fact, on a long stage, I'd say you're probably at an advantage because you get a lot of really crisp, nice single action trigger pulls. However, on a short stage like many classifier stages, I think you're at a disadvantage. It certainly can be done. I like the single action only SIG. That is my carry gun. That's what I have on my hip right now. On that note, there is also the AREX. You look that up. That is a copy of a SIG, but it's done very well. I have some experience with these, and I don't often mention them, but the AREX would be a really, really good crossover. I think AREX makes other guns, but I'm talking about their SIG copy. And these are not a cheap Turkish-made gun. These are made somewhere in Europe. I forget exactly where, but they make good quality guns. I was really impressed with the quality and the form and the function. These also would let you carry with the hammerback safely. I think they'd be a phenomenal crossover, the AREX, for all manner of crossover between carry and competition, a carry comp gun. The other really good choice, and the reason I have a SIG 226 is because I don't think this gun existed in what I wanted at the time I bought this gun. And that is a Beretta 92X. The ones that allow you to carry single action only. Unlike the SIGs, forgive me for the tedium ad nauseum here, but the SIGs that I'm aware of, the normal one is double single action, meaning the first trigger pull is double action, the rest sequentially, unless you decock it, or single action. Or you can get a single action only. The Berettas nicely allow you to do either or. You can carry hammerback safety on, or you could run it double single. You could decock it and run it double single. So you get some freedom there. They came out recently with a lot more models of their single action where you could carry it cocked and locked. The one that would be probably best for this is their Performance, their 92X Performance. A beautiful, elegant, awesome gun However, it has a steel frame, and steel frames are heavy. If I was willing to carry a gun that heavy every day for carry, I would carry one of my STIs, which are phenomenal guns, but a little bit heavy for carry. They have since come out with one with an aluminum or alloy frame, which is much lighter. That, if it had existed, I probably would have looked into getting one of those, because I looked for that exact thing, and to the best of my knowledge, it did not exist, or it wasn't available for sale. It probably was in prototype phase when I got the SIG Legion single action only. So the Beretta 92 X version, I think it's the X carry. If you're willing to carry a heavy gun, like not crazy heavy, but 1911 heavy, that 92X Pro, I think performance or Pro maybe stands for professional or whatever, that would be a phenomenal choice. But their lighter alloy frame carry gun would also be a good choice. If you wanted it a little bit heavier for competition, as I told the patron, just put a tungsten guide rod in any of these options. Your SIG 226, your Beretta, any of the other ones we're going to talk about, just throw a tungsten guide rod in there. It'll give you non-reciprocating mass out front where you want it, without making the gun so heavy that you probably don't want to carry it. There are nuances to different divisions. You know, you're going to shoot production division, you're going to shoot limited division, or you're going to shoot carry optics, which is the new hotness division. But most of the ones I'm talking about, you could get with an optics option. The other one is kind of a sleeper. They're great guns. I've just never professionally run one. All the experiences I've had with them have been positive. I did know another professional gunfighter that worked for me when I was the commander of the tactical team to stop active shooters, and he ran one, and he was really happy with it, and he did really well with it. I was pleasantly surprised with what a good gunfighter he was, and became even better in the time that he spent with us. I don't think that it's giving too much away if I say, Zach, if you ever listen to this, nice work. But he ran a CZ75. And there's many versions of the CZ75. If you don't know, they're fairly unique in that the slide rides inside of the frame, as opposed to pretty much the vast majority of other options where the slide rides on top of the frame. But this also gives you a little bit of different ergonomics. It has some advantages, some disadvantages, without getting too far down a rabbit hole. But they're a great crossover gun. Not all of them, they're just base model CZ75 is more of a duty gun. It's made as a military gun, so it's rugged, robust, but they also have many geared towards competition that I wouldn't have any problem carrying. The CZ Shadow, I think now it's the Shadow 2. I do believe you can carry these, much like I talked about with the Beretta, mix or match. You can carry it double single, which means you could shoot it in production division, you could shoot it in a bunch of other divisions, or you could carry it hammerback, safety on, if you wanted to shoot it in limited division, or you wanted to carry it like that, which is how I would carry it. But the CZ Shadow, and there are probably other models that do that crossover, that carry comp, but that's the one that sticks out to me. There are probably others. The CZ, I think, is really underrated. They're a fine gun. They have really good ergonomics. I think they rival the 1911 in ergonomics. And the next one I'm going to talk about is the one that got me thinking about this. And this, honestly, is probably as good or better than my current carry gun. And that is the HK USP Expert. I owned years ago, it was my second competition, practical pistol competition handgun, and I got it in 45, which I quickly got rid of because I realized that it didn't make sense to run a 45. It just cost more. I could get more practice in and get more hits on target quickly with a 9mm. So I bought that gun. I think I bought it for like $1,350, and I turned around and sold it for way less than that, took a hit on it. But if you listen to the show for any length of time, I'm not a gun collector. Anyway, they make that HK USP Expert in 9mm. You talk about a fantastic crossover gun. It is not, that I'm aware, available at all with an optics cut. You could get it direct cut and mount for an optic, which is what I did to my current gun. It wasn't out of the box ready for that, so I had it cut. I don't know if you do that, if it is going to be legal in carry optics division. I haven't looked that far into it. I haven't competed since pre-COVID. Right before COVID was my last big competition. I went to a national match. Took third in that match. But that was the last time I competed pre-COVID, just before COVID. COVID was probably existed, but before everything started to shut down and before they got canceled SHOT Show and canceled a bunch of shooting competitions and stuff. But anyway, don't know if you buy the gun and have it cut for an optic, if that is legal or not for carry optics. You might want to check on that. But the HK USP Expert is a phenomenal gun. It is fairly unique in that it has that simple operating system, although it has something unique on the barrel, and that is it has a groove cut around the front of the barrel that centers it in the slide, making it very accurate. It's called the Expert for a reason. It kind of has that gas, or not a gas seal, it has an O-ring that you would commonly see in like a gas or water seal, but it locks the barrel into the slide and makes it more accurate. It's a phenomenally accurate and very well balanced, good shooting gun. The HK 9mm Expert. They also make it in 45 if you want that. But the HK Expert, the HK USP, if you're not familiar, has a really good operating system in that you can also do that. And this may have been one of the first ones that allow you to do that, where you could carry hammerback, safety on, cocked and locked, or you could carry it double single. The same lever, the safety, also functions as a decocker. It's a great design. It's kind of a hidden gem, underrated. The HK USP overlooked, I think, maybe because it's been around for so long. But a phenomenal, phenomenal gun. So if that intrigues you, you might look into the HK USP Expert, and to a lesser extent, I think the HK USP Tactical. But that would be a good carry comp gun. And if you wanted just an iron sight option, they are phenomenally good and accurate with iron sights. And they come with really good iron sights. Okay, the one I haven't talked about yet, you probably know if you're thinking about this, kind of the obvious one. The STI/Staccato 2011. And no, not the Springfield 2011. I would not recommend that to anybody for anything. I'm talking about an actual STI or Staccato. Or if you have fairly large hands, an older, like Canadian-built para-ordnance. Double stack 1911. But the STI Staccato 2011, they're phenomenal guns. They are rather heavy, but they are I don't know what you would call it, dual frame, composite frame. The lower half of the frame, if you're not familiar with the STI Staccato, is polymer. Consider it like a modular gun before the chassis system. You can get like Extreme Grips. That's a guy that does custom grips for those. You can get them very svelte for a double stack 1911 that holds, let's say, 26 rounds. They were the standard for a long time for many divisions, open division, limited division. They're an awesome competition gun. They're also an awesome carry gun. I carried one as the commander of a tactical team. I had two because if you have a primary gun, you should probably have a backup to your primary. But I'm blessed to have two. The only issue is my older ones, the STIs, were not optics ready. And I really didn't know if I wanted to take a gun like that, since STI changed to Staccato and many of the old models aren't being made, if I really wanted to take one of those and cut it into a convertible and throw an optic on it. To me, it just seemed a little not right. I may do it at some point. But also they're rather heavy. Even with the polymer, I think they still weigh in the 40-ish ounces range, which is a little heavier than I'm honestly probably going to carry day to day. My kind of limit, and I carry a full-size fighting handgun, can still carry day to day, generally, not always, but most of the time, the majority of the time, is around 30-ish ounces, and they're just a bit heavy, and that's without an optic. But if you're willing to carry a gun that big, there is no rival, I think, as far as shootability goes, to an STI/Staccato 2011. They are the, I don't know, pick your flavor of really nice car. They are the Cadillac, the Ferrari, the McLaren of carry and competition guns. They're phenomenal. They are superb. They are smooth. They do have a higher maintenance than some other guns, but if you know how to take care of a 1911 style gun, they absolutely can be as reliable as just about anything else. So there is that, and I think is a really, really good choice. Now let us go down the path of striker-fired handguns. I don't think striker-fired handguns are as good as hammer-fired guns. They do really well in competition, but that's not because they're as good. That's because they handicap the divisions to make them be able to actually compete, right? The reason USPSA and IDPA and stuff has different divisions is to get more people into the sport, and that's a good thing. But, polymer striker-fired handguns are the most popular handgun. So they make divisions so those can compete. They don't compete neck and neck very well against hammer-fired guns. That's why, again, they do the handicap so they can compete. The reason I save these for the end. But if you are a striker-fired, polymer or striker-fired gun kind of guy, the big one, the big pachyderm in the room is Glock. And if you want to go this route, you go full size. You can go either the Glock 17, the Glock 34, or the Glock 17L. And those are your good crossovers. There's nothing wrong with carrying a Glock 17 concealed. I think that's probably your best crossover. And if you want a really good competition gun and you're willing to carry one as big, a Glock 34 or a Glock 17L is going to be better for competition for a lot of reasons. They are really good guns if you're willing to carry one that big, and they're still going to be lighter than like an STI. The issue is their triggers are atrocious, and ask anybody that really wins competition with the Glock, I bet they don't have the Glock factory trigger in there. I could be wrong, but most of the people I know that run Glocks in competition put in a better trigger. Not all, but most. And once you start putting in aftermarket triggers, you get away from that legendary Glock reliability, which is kind of, in my opinion, one of the only reasons to pick a Glock in the first place, because they have the ergonomics of a 2x4 and the trigger like pulling a piano down a dirt road. So there is that, but a Glock is an obvious choice. They have a lot of aftermarket mods, so if you're the guy that likes to just tinker with stuff, the Glock is probably your baby. Also on this, and the gun that I have won more competitions with than any other handgun, is a Smith & Wesson M&P. You can get a Smith & Wesson M&P with a trigger that rivals a 1911. Really light, really crisp. You can do that. It can be done. They also make the Smith & Wesson M&P Pro model. They make one with a longer slide. That is what I actually carried for a time when I got big into competition shooting, started winning competitions, and was still a sworn peace officer. I had said gun as my carry competition gun. I carried it on duty, and I shot it in competition. One of the reasons I went from more precision rifle shooting to practical handgun competition is because I thought if I was going to get in a gunfight to save my life, it was almost certainly most likely going to be, and I can't see the future, but way more likely to be a handgun than a rifle. So when I started getting serious into that, I went through several different guns, and I settled on the M&P, and that was my main competition gun for a long time, for USPSA, for Steel Challenge, and I also carried one on duty. A phenomenal, phenomenal gun. And back when I was doing it, I had to do most of the trigger mods myself and make parts and things like that, but they've been around a long time now. This gives you an idea. When I was running my M&P Pros, they came with a just regular stainless slide. It wasn't even finished with like the black like most M&Ps are. It was just black bottom and stainless top. M&P Pro. Gen 1. Anyway, now there are some really good options for aftermarket triggers for the M&P. Also, there is the option of the metal frame M&P now, if you wanted to go that route. And the new kid on the block, at least I consider it new, is the 320. Like, I still remember when the 250, which was like the failed parent of the 320, what was a kind of a new thing. But the 320 or the M17, that is also a really good gun. I didn't want to like that gun, but the more I trained with one and carried one and shot one, the more I liked it. I like the 320 M17. I think it's probably the best polymer striker-fired handgun on the market today. Yes, even better than the Glock. And I'd hate to say it because they have so much sentimental value, but I find myself recommending it to new shooters or people wanting to take that next step into serious competition or carry or training. I find myself recommending the 320 or M17 more than the M&P. And because I'm a practical guy, I don't want to recommend something based on sentimentality. I think the M17 320 has a lot of advantages. The big one they engineered it for is that it's modular. You can put different grip frames on it. You can take a Dremel to one, and if you mess it up, you're out $50 and it's not several $100s like a Glock or an M&P. And of all the factory out-of-the-box striker-fired triggers, of these three that I've talked about, I think they have the best out-of-the-box trigger. You can get many different versions, many different iterations, but a good full size like an M17 or a full size 320 of many different flavors. They make so many. But a good full size, even an M17, does not weigh that much. It's lighter even than my alloy frame 226s, which is why sometimes I carry that as my full size carry gun. It's lighter. That's a good option. Not the only polymer striker-fired crossovers. There's also the Walther PDP I'll briefly mention, but those are the big ones. The big three, I think, for if you want a striker fire. The other thing to consider is, are you a survivalist or are you a prepper? I am, and I make no apologies for that. If you are, you might want to consider what's most common, what magazines are most common, what has a battle-proven, military-proven record. And that would narrow down your options. And the one that I would recommend, because it's the one that's on my hip right now, and I don't want to be a hypocrite, would probably be the SIG 226. It has those things. It's common. It's battle-proven, battle-tested. And what I might do, what I recommended, is get the AREX and run that in competition and put a buttload of rounds to it and get familiar with it, which is basically the copy that has the dual carryability. And I would get the SIG Legion, single action only, and carry it. I like to have a backup, and I would shoot the other one in competition, put the high round counts through, and just beat it up, because you beat up guns quite a bit in competition, and carry the SIG and keep it. I'd still shoot it and train with it and make sure it worked, but there's pretty much all the continuity of training there, and carry that one. That is my carry gun, although I don't have an AREX. I usually will train a lot with the 320 because it has a much worse trigger than the single action only SIG, but I kind of consider that like doing pull-ups with weight. You make more resistance, that way a regular pull-up is easier, if that's a decent analogy. And also the Beretta, I'm recommending the SIG first because that's what I have on me and I can attest to it, but I love Berettas. I love their operating system. They are definitely combat proven, and they have that 92X carry now. If I were, making the decision again, and I didn't already have the SIG, and that gun existed when I was looking for it, I might have gotten that one. So that will be my second choice. The X Carry or the 92X Pro, depending on what weight you want. But just phenomenal guns. Both battle-proven designs. Granted, the traditional Berettas and SIGs are double single, but I haven't heard of any reliability issues with the single-action-only variants. Both of those have optics-ready options, so that's going to be my recommendation. Or if you are really, really dedicated and you really want to almost marry training double single, you could just get the regular Beretta 92 or the SIG 226 double single. It certainly can be done. Anyway, those are my thoughts on carry comp guns, carry competition guns. I don't know if that's a term, but that's a term I'm going to use right now. I should probably look up and see if there is any gun called the carry comp and what it is. And when I looked it up, I just saw like comps, like a compensator for carry, which is not what I was looking for. But those are my thoughts on that. I thought a pretty good episode. Maybe there are other people's. I doubt there's whole nations and tribes looking for this category, but there's probably other people out there besides that one patron that are looking for this, a good crossover carry gun and competition gun. So carry comp guns. There you go. I'm blessed to serve you today. If you enjoyed this episode, I've been harping on Patreon. You probably know about Patreon if you're a regular listener. Instead, if you are listening to this, if this is not if you've listened to the end, I guess you can still leave a review. So if you haven't ever scrolled down and hit some stars, please consider scrolling down and hitting some stars for the podcast. That's all I'm going to say today. Just scroll down and consider hitting some stars, whether it's iTunes or Spotify, if the app allows you. Consider doing that. I don't know how it works, but apparently it helps out the podcast, and blessings are meant to be shared. So if you like this episode, perhaps that'll help somebody else discover the episode. With that, the tactical tip of the day. One thing that I would do when I was big into reloading, when I was big into competition shooting, if I was serious about a competition, my reloads, I would take my barrel out of my gun, and yes, one by one, out of my cartridge boxes, I would drop in my reloads to make sure they went in and out of the chamber and seated properly and came out properly. And I would inspect the primers, make sure they were flush, and do a visual and physical inspection of each and every round before competition. You're serious about shooting competition and you run reloads, you might look into that. Also, I'm not going to give out specific load data, but I've won a bunch of competitions with Extreme Bullets. They're not a sponsor of me or anything, but Extreme Bullets over 700X. And either Federal or CCI primers. Anyway, tactical tips of the day. And then your tactical verse of the day. You shall do no injustice in judgment in measurements of length, weight, or volume. You shall have honest scales, honest weights, and honest ephah, and honest hin. How does that apply to today? Competition shooting. Most of the disciplines that I'm aware of, all the disciplines I can think of, if you break the line, it counts for that score. Meaning, let's say you're shooting and there's a perforation or a line between the 9 ring and the 10 ring, or the 10 ring and the X ring, or if you're talking USPSA, the C zone and the A zone. If it breaks the line, it counts. Even if most of the bullet is outside, if it breaks the line, it counts. Don't cheat. Be consistent, right? If it doesn't break the line, it doesn't break the line. Don't, stick a bullet in there and make the hole bigger or anything like that. Don't push it in with your finger. If you need a second witness, call over a second witness and say, hey, I can't tell did this break the line or not. But be honest and fair in your dealings. That's just one small example. You shall do no injustice in judgment and measurements of length, weight, or volume. Be fair and consistent, man. That's a mark of a good leader. Just a good man. A good God-fearing man. With that, thanks for listening and have a blessed day.